Frank could experience anyone's life simply by touching them. But what he saw inside people's minds changed everything. Everything. The city was quiet, but it was never truly calm. A gray sky stretched over tall buildings, their windows shut for what seemed like years. People passed by like shadows, nameless, restless, and emotionless. Amid this silent flow, a 25-year-old man named Frank Miller walked along. He was the kind of person you could lose sight of today and forget about entirely by tomorrow. Not because he deserved to be forgotten, but because he always moved so quietly, so softly, so far in the background that the world barely noticed him. Frank worked at a small company, an ordinary employee who never spoke loudly, never took risks, and never voiced his dreams. He always felt that the real events of life, the important, thrilling, destiny-shaping events were happening in other people's lives, not his. His own life felt like a dimly lit room. Nothing was wrong, but nothing felt particularly meaningful either. Until that day, when fate decided to pull the curtain back. It was a cold morning, with a thin rain falling. An old man lost his balance on the sidewalk, and his grocery bag spilled onto the wet ground. Without thinking, Frank reached out to help him, and in that instant, the world shattered. Sounds vanished. Colors faded. The air around him rippled. In the blink of an eye, Frank was standing in a different room. He could smell old medicine. The walls were faded, covered in aged photographs of people long gone. He felt his hands trembling, his knees aching, and a heavy weight of regret that had lived in the old man's chest for decades. In utter disbelief, Frank realized he was inside the old man's body. How long did it last? A few seconds? A few minutes? He didn't know. When his eyes opened again, he was back on the same street. The old man was still holding his hand and said, "Thank you, son." Frank just stared at him, unable to understand what had just happened. He couldn't sleep that night, but he tried to convince himself it had been an illusion, a trick of the mind, until the next day, when life decided to raise the curtain a second time. At work, while taking a cup of coffee from his coworker, Sam Carter, their hands touched, and for the second time, the world collapsed. Suddenly, he was standing in the middle of a vast conference hall. Spotlights glared down, stern faces of executives stared back, and the rustling of slides filled the room full of expectations. And among all of it, Sam's inner voice rose from the depths of his being. "Don't fail. Not this time. Please, don't mess this up." Frank felt some fear and anxiety shaking through his own bones, a fear no one else ever saw, hidden behind Sam's usual friendly smile. When Frank came back to himself, the coffee in his hand was cold. Sam was smiling, but Frank could no longer believe that smile. He had tasted the truth inside people, not what they showed, but what they hid. From that moment on, a dangerous curiosity began to grow inside him. If I can see other people's lives, he thought, maybe I can understand what a better life looks like. He had always compared himself to others, always believed something was missing in his life, that it was small, slow, and meaningless. But now, he had a power no one else had. The power to see the truth, and this was the beginning of a deeper fall. Frank decided to test it intentionally. In the hallway at work, he saw the charismatic, successful, popular manager, Oliver Grant. Here was a man with a confident expression, stylish clothes, and firm steps, to very symbol of a better life. Frank handed him a folder, making sure their hands touched. And he fell. This time, he was in Oliver's office. A glass-walled room overlooking the city. A polished wooden desk, hundreds of emails, dozens of responsibilities, and a sense of power burning through his body like fire. But then, the darkness behind that success revealed itself. Oliver ate dinner alone every single night. His father had never once told him, "I'm proud of you." He lived each day terrified of losing his status. And in the company bathroom, he had cried in complete silence. When Frank returned to his own body, that feeling of power suddenly felt meaningless. A few days later, his hand brushed against a homeless man's. Another fall, this time into a dark room that smelled of mold. With aching legs, an empty stomach, and the painful feeling of being forgotten by the world. But inside that man's heart, a small light glowed. He saw a simple message written under a bridge. Tomorrow might be different. Someone who had nothing still had hope. And Frank, who had a home and a job, had none. In the park, he accidentally touched the hand of a young woman named Emily Cross. Frank fell into the heart of a bitter breakup. The crying, the loneliness, the fresh wounds. But even in that cracked heart, there was a quiet strength. One day, I will love again. At an art gallery. A brief handshake with Nathan Cole threw him into the life of a famous painter. A life full of beautiful, vibrant colors. But the mind behind the art was filled with darkness. A voice whispering, "You're a fraud. You're a not. Anog, you'll never be enough." Frank staggered out of that life, reeling. Outer beauty, inner hell. His nights became unbearable. None of his feelings were his anymore. He would laugh without wanting to. He would cry without knowing why. He feared things that weren't a danger to him. He got angry for no reason at all. He had become a collection of borrowed emotions. His mind was a shattered mirror, with each piece reflecting someone else's life. Eventually, on another rainy day, he just sat down in the middle of the street. He was out of breath, his mind screaming. An elderly man approached him. "Son, are you okay?" he asked, and reached out his hand. Frank tried to pull back, but it was too late. This was a fall deeper than all the others. He entered the man's life. A marriage that had ended in bitterness. Opportunities missed out of fear. Friends lost over the years. A life wasted comparing himself to others. And the man, in the darkness of his own mind, said to himself, "I spent my whole life watching other people's lives, and I forgot to live my own." That sentence hit Frank like a storm. That night, Frank went to the rooftop of his building. The city glowed beneath him, but the sky above was dark. He looked at his hands, the same hands that had touched so many lives, yet had never built his own. Softly, with a voice that for the first time truly belonged to him, he said, "I don't want a borrowed life. I want my own." The next morning, he made a decision. He would not touch anyone. He would not enter anyone's life. He would not compare, and he would not run away. He took out a notebook and wrote, "My goals, my dreams, my path." Not a path stolen from other people's lives. His own path. Monts Basset. Frank moved forward slowly, quietly, but genuinely. He no longer fell into anyone's life. He no longer borrowed anything, because he had finally learned. Comparison steals your life, but creating your own life gives it back. Frank no longer borrows or watches life. He builds it, step by step, breath by breath. His life is quiet, but it is real, and this was the beginning of his true life. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more.